Case 1. Christa Gail Pike. She was 18 years old. She was enrolled in a federal vocational program. She had a 17-year-old boyfriend. And on the night of January 12, 1995, she led a fellow student into a wooded area near the University of Tennessee Agricultural Campus, and that student never came back. Christa Gail Pike, born March 10, 1976, is currently the only woman on Tennessee's death row. This is her case file. Pike was enrolled at the Knoxville Job Corps Center, a federally funded vocational training facility for low-income young adults located near the University of Tennessee campus. Her boyfriend was Tadel Ship, 17 years old. The third person involved was 18-year-old Shayla Peterson. The victim was 19-year-old Colleen Slimmer, originally from Florida, also a Job Corps participant. According to court documents entered into the record of the Knox County Criminal Court, Pike believed that Slimmer had a romantic interest in Ship. Prosecutors argued at trial, and the jury accepted, that this belief was the foundation for the conspiracy. Pike wanted Slimmer removed from the picture. She built a plan to do exactly that. The Job Corps Center maintained a sign-out logbook for residents. That logbook became one of the foundational pieces of physical evidence in the prosecution. On the evening of January 12, 1995, the logbook showed that 4 residents signed out together: Pike, Ship, Peterson, and Slimmer. Only 3 of them returned. A University of Tennessee Grounds Department employee discovered the remains of Colleen Slimmer on the morning of January 13th. Knoxville Police Department detectives, working alongside University of Tennessee police, responded immediately and began conducting interviews at the Job Corps Center. The sign-out log established the 4-person group within hours of investigators arriving on site. Within 36 hours of that discovery, all 3 perpetrators were in custody. Here is where the evidence gets critically important. When Pike was arrested, investigators conducted a search of her person as part of the booking procedure. In her jacket pocket, they found an item taken from the scene of the offense. That item was recovered, cataloged as physical evidence, and admitted at trial. It placed Christa Pike at the location where Colleen Slimmer died. It demonstrated not just her presence, but her direct involvement. Pike waived her Miranda rights on January 14, 1995, and gave a full, recorded confession to Knox County investigators. That tape was later admitted into evidence at trial. Ship also confessed his involvement. Peterson, whose role prosecutors assessed as less direct, agreed to cooperate with the state. The Knox County District Attorney General's office, led by Randy Nichols, filed charges against all 3. Pike was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Ship, despite being 17 years old at the time of the offense, was transferred from juvenile court to adult court under Tennessee Code Annotated Section 37, Chapter 1. Peterson was charged as an accessory after the fact. Pike's trial began in the Knox County Criminal Court in March of 1996. The prosecution built its case on 3 pillars. First, the recorded confession Pike had given on January 14th. Second, the testimony of co-defendant Shayla Peterson. Third, the physical evidence found in Pike's pocket at the time of her arrest. The defense presented evidence of Pike's mental health history, focusing on a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and a difficult upbringing in Beckley, West Virginia. The jury considered those arguments and rejected them as to both guilt and punishment. On March 22, 1996, after a short deliberation, the Knox County jury returned a verdict of guilty on both counts. First-degree murder. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The sentencing phase followed. On March 30, 1996, Judge Mary Beth Leibovitz presided. The jury imposed the death penalty. The conspiracy conviction carried an additional 25 years. Christa Pike was 20 years old at sentencing, making her one of the youngest women sentenced to death in the United States in the post-Furman era of capital punishment. Peterson received a 6-year sentence as an accessory after the fact, with credit for approximately 460 days served pre-trial and the balance on probation. What followed sentencing was 3 decades of appellate litigation. Pike's federal habeas corpus petition was denied by the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Tennessee in March of 2016. The United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit affirmed that denial in August of 2019. Pike's attorneys then attempted to use the Tennessee Supreme Court's 2022 ruling in State v. Booker, which addressed mandatory life without parole sentences for juvenile homicide offenders. Knox County Criminal Court Judge Scott Green denied the motion in October of 2023, holding that the Booker ruling applied only to juvenile offenders. Pike had been a legal adult at the time of the offense. On September 30, 2025, the Tennessee Supreme Court issued a death warrant scheduling Pike's execution for September 30, 2026. If carried out, it would be the first execution of a woman in Tennessee in approximately 2 centuries. Under Tennessee statute, Pike may select lethal injection or the electric chair. Tadel Ship appeared before the Tennessee Board of Parole for his first hearing on October 8, 2025. Board member Tim Gobble voted to deny parole based on the seriousness of the offense and recommended the case be reviewed again in 5 years, in October of 2030. Colleen Slemmer's mother, May Martinez, submitted a video statement opposing parole. The full board denied parole. The Pike case is taught in Tennessee criminal procedure courses as a foundational example of accomplice testimony, the admission of recorded confessions, and the application of Tennessee's death penalty statute to a young female defendant. It remains one of the most heavily litigated capital cases in the state's modern legal history. Colleen Slemmer was 19 years old. She was from Florida. She came to Tennessee to build a better future through the Job Corps program. She never came home. Case 2. Natasha Wallen Cornett. 3 teenage girls. 3 guns. 1 rest area on Interstate 81. And a family of 4 that stopped to talk to them. This is the Lilid case. It is documented in the Greene County Criminal Court under the caption State v. Howell. The 6 co-defendants are Natasha Wallen Cornett, age 18, Christa R. Sturgill, age 18, Karen R. Howell, age 17, Edward Dean Mullins, age 19, Joseph Lance Reisner, age 20, and Jason Blake Bryant, age 14, the youngest member of the group. 3 of the 6 defendants were teenage girls. The case's prosecution was significantly shaped by the romantic and personal relationships among them. Cornett and Mullins were romantically involved at the time of the offense. Cornett had also recently met Bryant, the 14-year-old, and court testimony established a brief personal encounter between them. Howell and Cornett were close friends. These relationships informed the trial court's assessment of each participant's role in the sentencing phase. The group left Pikeville, Kentucky, on April 6, 1997, in a Chevrolet Citation belonging to Reisner's mother. They carried 2 firearms, a 9mm handgun and a .25 caliber handgun. Court records established that the group was concerned their vehicle would not survive a long-distance trip and had discussed acquiring a replacement. At a rest area on Interstate 81 in Greene County, Tennessee, the group encountered the Lilid family. Vidar Lilid was 34 years old. His wife Delphina was 28. Their daughter Tabitha was 6 years old. Their son Peter was 2 years old. The family were Jehovah's Witnesses returning to their home in Knoxville from a religious convention. Vidar Lilid approached the group at the rest area to discuss his faith. What happened next is fully documented in Greene County Criminal Court records and in the February 29, 2000 opinion of the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals. The Lilid family was forced into their van at gunpoint and driven to a remote location on Payne Hollow Lane near Bayleton in Greene County. At that location, all 4 family members were shot. Vidar Lilid died from his injuries. Delphina Lilid died from her injuries. 6-year-old Tabitha Lilid died. 2-year-old Peter Lilid survived. In keeping with the editorial standards of this documentary, no further description of what occurred at that location will be provided. The relevant legal fact is this. 3 members of the Lilid family were killed. 1 survived. The 6 defendants drove away in the family's van. 2 Greene County Sheriff's Department deputies were the first law enforcement officers on scene. Greene County Emergency Medical Services arrived shortly after. A Lifestar helicopter transported the surviving child to the University of Tennessee Memorial Hospital Pediatric Intensive Care Unit in Knoxville. The investigation, led by Greene County Sheriff's Department investigator John Huffine, moved rapidly. Vehicle tracking data, witness statements, and federal law enforcement cooperation all contributed. 2 days after the killings, the 6 defendants were stopped by United States Customs and Immigration officials at the Arizona-Mexico border. Mexican authorities had ordered them back across the border for entering without proper documentation. At the time of arrest, several defendants had personal property belonging to the Lilid family in their possession. That physical evidence directly linked them to the scene in Greene County. Each of the 6 defendants was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, and 1 count of theft of property. The state, through 3rd Judicial District Attorney General C. Berkeley Bell, filed notice seeking the death penalty for the 4 adult defendants. Howell and Bryant, as juveniles, were not eligible for the death penalty under Tennessee law. Before the case reached a jury, the state agreed to withdraw its death penalty requests in exchange for guilty pleas from all 6 defendants. Each defendant waived the right to a jury trial. Knox County Criminal Court Judge James E. Beckner conducted a consolidated sentencing hearing. In March of 1998, Judge Beckner sentenced each defendant to life in prison without the possibility of parole on each of the 3 first-degree murder convictions, plus 25 years for the attempted murder conviction. Sentences were ordered to run consecutively. The Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals modified Sturgill's sentence in its February 29, 2000 opinion. The court found that her level of direct participation differed significantly from the other defendants and modified her 3 life without parole sentences to run concurrently. Her 25-year sentence for attempted murder was also adjusted. The other 5 defendants' dispositions were affirmed. Post-conviction litigation has continued for nearly 3 decades. In 2017, Karen Howell and Jason Bryant filed petitions citing the United States Supreme Court's juvenile sentencing jurisprudence from Miller v. Alabama. In 2022, Howell, Sturgill, and Mullins filed petitions under Tennessee's Post-Conviction Fingerprint Analysis Act of 2021, requesting forensic analysis of the original firearms. Greene County Criminal Court Judge Stacey Pearson denied those petitions, finding no reasonable probability that analysis would produce a more favorable outcome. The Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed that denial in 2023. The Tennessee Supreme Court declined further review in 2024. Natasha Cornett is currently incarcerated at the Bledsoe County Correctional Complex in Pikeville, Tennessee. Karen Howell is at the Tennessee Prison for Women. The case remains a foundational reference in Tennessee jurisprudence on accomplice sentencing, juvenile life without parole appeals, and post-conviction fingerprint analysis procedure. The Lilid family stopped at a rest area in Greene County, Tennessee, to share their faith. They did not come home. Case 3. Amanda Dawn McGee. She was 15 years old. She was pregnant, and she let a man into her house while her father was asleep. This is the Amanda McGee case, documented in the Knox County Criminal Court System in western Knoxville, Tennessee. The defendant of record is Amanda Dawn McGee. Her co-defendant was 21-year-old Andrew Bryan Mann, the father of her unborn child. A third co-defendant, Christopher Gordon Kirkland, was charged as an accessory after the fact. McGee lived in Solway, an unincorporated community in western Knox County. Her father, Terrence McGee, was 60 years old and a retired employee of Knox Cartage Company. Her stepmother, Elisa McGee, was 41 years old and worked at ZYP Coatings in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Court testimony established that both parents strongly disapproved of Amanda's relationship with Andrew Mann. That disapproval had created sustained tension in the household in the weeks before the offense. On June 29, 2007, Amanda McGee called Mann at approximately the time Elisa left the house for work. Terrence McGee was asleep inside. According to recorded confessions and trial testimony, Amanda admitted Mann into the residence. At approximately 9:30 in the morning, Terrence McGee was shot. He died from his injuries. Approximately 8 hours later, Elisa McGee returned from work. She was confronted in the residence and also shot. She died from her injuries. In keeping with the editorial standards of this documentary, the specific physical details of how either death occurred will not be described. What the court record reflects is that both victims died inside their own home, and that the investigation established the coordinated nature of the plan. The bodies were discovered on July 1, 2007, when relatives went to the residence after being unable to reach either victim. Knox County Sheriff's Office investigators responded. Sheriff J.J. Jones held a press conference on July 2 announcing the arrests of 3 suspects. The investigation produced multiple categories of physical and testimonial evidence. Investigators searched Mann's vehicle and recovered a .32 caliber semi-automatic pistol. A witness identified in court records as Rebecca Duggan testified that she had delivered a bag containing the firearm to Mann 2 days before the shootings. Cellular telephone records, analyzed by investigators, established a pattern of calls between Amanda McGee and Mann on the morning and afternoon of June 29, 2007. McGee's recorded confession was the centerpiece of the prosecution's evidence. In that statement, she told investigators that she and Mann had planned the killings over a period of several weeks. She disclosed that the original plan had involved battery acid as the method. The defendants later decided to use the firearm. She also told investigators that she had called Elisa at work at some point during the day. McGee, Mann, and Kirkland were arrested on July 2, 2007. McGee was initially processed through juvenile court before being transferred to the adult court system under Tennessee's juvenile transfer statute. She was indicted on 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. On October 2, 2007, Mann was separately indicted on 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. Kirkland was indicted on 2 counts of being an accessory after the fact to first-degree murder. McGee gave birth to her child while in Knox County juvenile custody. In 2009, she entered a guilty plea in Knox County criminal court to 2 counts of second-degree murder. Mann proceeded to trial in 2008. The Knox County jury convicted him on both counts of first-degree premeditated murder. Kirkland's testimony was a significant element of the prosecution's case against Mann. Kirkland testified that Mann had contacted him by telephone during the events of June 29, and that Kirkland had later come to the residence. The trial court sentenced McGee in 2009 to 20 years for her father's death and 25 years for her stepmother's death, for a total effective sentence of 45 years. Mann received consecutive life sentences. Kirkland received a sentence as an accessory after the fact with a shorter term. Mann's post-conviction petition, captioned Andrew Bryan Mann v. State of Tennessee, was denied at the trial court level, and that denial was affirmed by the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals in 2015. The Tennessee Supreme Court declined further review. McGee also filed a petition for post-conviction relief, which was litigated through the Tennessee appellate system. The case is studied in Tennessee criminal procedure as an example of juvenile adult co-defendant prosecution in a domestic homicide context. It has been featured on Investigation Discovery's program Forbidden, Dying for Love. It is regularly cited in discussions of Tennessee's juvenile transfer process and the evidentiary weight of recorded confessions in co-defendant prosecutions. Terrence McGee was 60 years old. He was asleep in his own home. Elisa McGee was 41 years old. She was coming home from work. Neither of them knew what was waiting for them. Case 4. Vanessa Lynn Coleman. She was 18 years old. She was not from Tennessee. She came to Knoxville with her boyfriend, and she was present during 2 days that ended with 2 people dead. This is the Vanessa Coleman case. It is documented in the Knox County Criminal Court and in subsequent appellate proceedings before the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals, the Tennessee Supreme Court, and federal courts. Coleman, born June 29, 1988, was originally from Lebanon, Kentucky. She was the romantic partner of Latalvis Darnell Cobbins, 24 years old. She traveled with him to Knoxville in early January of 2007. When they arrived, they were staying at a rental house at 2316 Chipman Street with Cobbins's half-brother Lamarcus Duvall Davidson and Davidson's associate George Giovanni Thomas. The victims were Shannon Gale Christian, age 21, a senior at the University of Tennessee, and Hugh Christopher Newsom Jr., age 23. The two had been dating for approximately 2 months. On the evening of January 6, 2007, Christian and Newsom were leaving an apartment complex parking lot in Knox County when they were taken at gunpoint and forced into Christian's vehicle. They were transported to the Chipman Street address where Coleman, Cobbins, Davidson, and Thomas were residing. Christopher Newsom died. Shannon Christian died. Newsom's remains were recovered near a set of railroad tracks the following day. Christian's remains were recovered on January 9, 2007, during the execution of a search warrant at the Chipman Street address. In keeping with the editorial standards of this documentary, no further description of the conditions of their deaths will be provided. The relevant legal facts are these. Both victims died as a result of offenses committed at and around the Chipman Street address. Multiple defendants were present. Multiple defendants faced charges. The investigation was led by the Knoxville Police Department. Investigators used cellular phone tower data to track Christian's last known location. Her vehicle was located on January 8, 2007. A bank envelope recovered from inside the vehicle bore Davidson's name, directing investigators to the Chipman Street address. Search warrants were executed, and both victims were located. Coleman was arrested in Lebanon, Kentucky, by Lebanon Police Department officers. Her Knox County indictment included 40 counts, 12 counts of felony murder, 1 count of premeditated murder of Shannon Christian, 1 count of especially aggravated robbery related to Newsom, 4 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping, 20 counts of aggravated rape, and 2 counts of theft. Coleman's first trial took place in Knox County Criminal Court before Judge Richard Baumgartner, with jurors brought in from outside Knox County. On May 13, 2010, the jury acquitted her of first-degree murder but convicted her on lesser-included offenses, including facilitation. On July 30, 2010, Judge Baumgartner sentenced her to 53 years. The case was then substantially complicated by a separate development that had nothing to do with the defendants. In March of 2011, Judge Baumgartner resigned from the bench after admitting to a drug addiction and to purchasing prescription medication from convicted offenders. He entered a guilty plea to official misconduct and was subsequently disbarred by the Tennessee Supreme Court. In December of 2011, Judge John Kerry Blackwood granted new trials to Coleman, Cobbins, Davidson, and Thomas. The Tennessee Supreme Court overturned the order as to Cobbins, Davidson, and Thomas. The order granting Coleman a new trial was allowed to stand. Coleman's retrial took place in November of 2012. The jury was selected from Jackson, Tennessee, more than 300 miles west of Knoxville. On November 20, 2012, the jury convicted her of facilitation of aggravated kidnapping, facilitation of rape, and facilitation of the murder of Shannon Christian. She was acquitted on facilitation of the murder of Christopher Newsom. On February 1, 2013, Judge Blackwood sentenced Coleman to a total of 35 years, 25 years for facilitation of Christian's murder, 6 years for facilitation of kidnapping, and 4 years for facilitation of rape. The Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed Coleman's convictions and sentence in 2014. Coleman became parole eligible in 2017. She was denied parole at the December 2014 hearing and again on December 8, 2020. Her next parole eligibility is set for December of 2030. Coleman is currently held at the Deborah K. Johnson Rehabilitation Center in Nashville. Her sentence is scheduled to expire on April 18, 2036. The Tennessee General Assembly passed 2 statutes directly connected to this case. The Chris Newsom Act of 2014 addressed the 13th juror rule and judicial validation of jury verdicts. The Shannon Christian Act of 2014 placed restrictions on certain forms of victim characterization at trial. Shannon Christian was 21 years old. Christopher Newsom was 23. They had been together 2 months. They went to see a friend on a January evening in Knoxville, and they never came home. Case 5, Janelle Potter. 2 people were found dead in their home in a small mountain town. Their infant child was alive in his mother's arms. And when investigators traced the motive back through months of social media messages and fabricated emails, every thread led to one person, a woman whose own boyfriend did not fully understand she was the one pulling the strings. This is the Janelle Potter case. It is documented in the Johnson County Criminal Court in Mountain City, Tennessee. The defendants are Janelle Potter, whose age at the time of the offense was in her late 20s, her father Marvin Potter, known as Buddy, her mother Barbara Potter, and Janelle Potter's boyfriend, Jamie Curd. The victims were Billy Payne, age 36, and his fiancée Billie Jean Hayworth, age 38. They were found deceased on January 31, 2012, inside their rural Johnson County home. Their 7-month-old child was found alive in his mother's arms. Both victims had died from gunshot injuries. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Scott Lott and Johnson County Sheriff's Department Chief Deputy Joe Woodard led the investigation. Investigators rapidly identified that the victims had been involved in a documented social media dispute with Janelle Potter on Facebook. That dispute became the principal investigative thread. Jamie Curd was brought in for questioning. He submitted to a polygraph examination. The results indicated deception. After approximately 6 hours of interrogation, Curd implicated Marvin Potter in the killings. Investigators then arranged a pretextual telephone call between Curd and Marvin Potter. During that call, Marvin Potter made statements that prosecutors would characterize at trial as a partial admission of involvement. Investigators executed a search warrant at the Potter residence and recovered approximately 51 items, including the family computer. A Tennessee Bureau of Investigation forensic analyst was assigned to reconstruct documents that had been shredded and placed in Marvin Potter's truck. That reconstruction produced more than 100 pages of email correspondence. Those emails purported to come from a Central Intelligence Agency operative whose name in the correspondence was Chris. The Chris emails contained warnings about threats directed at Janelle Potter and references to people in her life who needed to be dealt with. Forensic analysis of the Potter home computer traced the Internet Protocol address of the emails attributed to Chris. The analysis determined that those emails originated from the same Internet Protocol address as the Potter household. Prosecutors contended at trial that Janelle Potter had created and operated the Chris persona entirely by herself, using it to convince her parents and Jamie Curd that an intelligence source was directing them to act against the victims. Marvin Potter was arrested in February of 2012. In August of 2013, Janelle Potter and Barbara Potter were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Jamie Curd accepted a plea agreement and received a 25-year sentence. In October of 2013, Marvin Potter was found guilty at trial of 2 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 2 concurrent life terms. In May of 2015, 3.5 years after the killings, Janelle Potter and Barbara Potter went to trial together in the 1st Judicial District. The prosecution presented the email evidence, computer forensic analysis including the Internet Protocol address trace, the reconstructed shredded documents, and testimony from investigators and digital forensic analysts. Prosecutor Dennis Brooks argued to the jury that writing patterns and spelling characteristics in the Chris emails matched Janelle Potter's documented communication style. Both defendants were convicted of first-degree murder. Janelle Potter was sentenced to 2 concurrent life sentences. Barbara Potter received a similar disposition. In 2021, Barbara Potter's conviction was overturned on appeal on the ground that her trial counsel had a conflict of interest, having simultaneously represented Marvin Potter. Rather than retry the case, prosecutors accepted a plea to facilitation of murder. Barbara Potter became parole eligible under that modified sentence. The case is studied in Tennessee criminal practice as a leading example of digital forensic evidence in a homicide prosecution. The reconstruction of shredded documents, Internet Protocol address tracing, and stylometric analysis of email content all played central roles. The case has been featured on ABC's 20/20 in both 2015 and 2023. It remains one of the most technically sophisticated evidence presentations in the history of Johnson County criminal court proceedings. Billy Payne and Billie Jean Hayworth were found by investigators in their Johnson County home. Their 7-month-old son was alive. He grew up without his parents because of a social media feud that led to a fabricated espionage plot that led to 2 people losing their lives. Case 6. Brittany Lena Yvonne Moser. 4 young people were found dead inside a vehicle on a rural road in Cumberland County. They had gone to meet someone they trusted, and the woman who helped set that meeting was sitting in a Dayton, Tennessee, home 40 miles away when the indictment papers came for her. This is the Renegade Mountain case. The case is documented in the Cumberland County Criminal Court under the state of Tennessee versus Jacob Allen Bennett, with girlfriend co-defendant Brittany Lena Yvonne Moser. Bennett was 26 years old. Moser was 25. They were residents of Dayton, Tennessee. The victims were Ricky Danielle Jacobson, age 22, Dominic Lewis Davis, age 17, Stephen Michael Presley, age 17, and Jonathan Raymond Lajeunesse, age 16. Their bodies were discovered on September 12, 2013, inside a vehicle parked along a rural road in the Renegade Mountain community of Cumberland County, approximately 50 miles west of Knoxville. All 4 victims had died from gunshot injuries. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office conducted a joint investigation. Bennett was identified as a suspect almost immediately following the discovery of the vehicle. He was apprehended the day after the killings in neighboring Rhea County on a parole violation. Moser was arrested at her home in Dayton on the day the grand jury returned its indictment. The state's theory, articulated at trial by Deputy District Attorney General Gary McKenzie, was that Bennett and Moser had attempted to rob Jacobson and Davis during what investigators described as a marijuana exchange. The robbery escalated at the scene. All 4 occupants of the vehicle were killed. A Cumberland County grand jury indicted Bennett on 4 counts of felony murder, 4 counts of premeditated murder, and 2 counts of attempted aggravated robbery. Moser was indicted on 4 counts of felony murder and 2 counts of attempted aggravated robbery. The state initially filed notice indicating it was considering the death penalty for Bennett. Before the case reached a jury verdict, Bennett accepted a plea agreement. He was sentenced in June of 2014 to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The 4 victims' families were present in the Cumberland County courtroom on the day of sentencing. Moser's case was resolved through a separate plea agreement. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of facilitation of second-degree murder. The plea reflected the prosecution's assessment that her participation, while criminal, was at a lower level than that of Bennett, who investigators established as the individual who carried out the killings. Moser was sentenced to 10 years in the Tennessee Department of Correction at 30% service, meaning eligibility for release after approximately 3 years of the effective sentence. The facilitation plea and sentence were accepted by the Cumberland County Criminal Court. The case stands as one of the clearest examples in Tennessee's modern criminal record of the state's facilitation statute, codified at Tennessee Code Annotated Section 39, Chapter 11, Section 403, applied to a girlfriend co-defendant, where a female participant did not personally carry out the principal offense but contributed materially to its commission. Tennessee prosecutors have used facilitation to impose significant consequences while reserving the heaviest sentences for the principal offender. The Moser disposition is cited in Tennessee legal circles as a textbook example of that application. The case attracted national attention because of the youth of the victims. 3 of the 4 were teenagers. All 4 were gone because of a robbery attempt on a rural Cumberland County road. Ricky Jacobson was 22. Dominic Davis was 17. Stephen Presley was 17. Jonathan LaJeunesse was 16. They were found in a vehicle. They never had a chance to defend themselves. Case 7. Casey Calderon. She arranged the meeting. She knew what was going to happen. And when Nicholas Brunetti arrived in that parking lot in Memphis on January 6, 2018, she was already there waiting for him. This is the Casey Calderon case, documented in the Shelby County Criminal Court in Memphis, Tennessee. Calderon was 20 years old at the time of the offense, 21 at the time of disposition. She was the romantic partner of co-defendant Jamarcus Miller, age 24. In Shelby County District Attorney press releases and internal prosecution documents, Calderon's role was described as a girlfriend lure setup, a pattern in which a female associate arranges contact with a victim to facilitate a robbery carried out by a male co-defendant. The victim was Nicholas Brunetti, age 29. Calderon was an acquaintance of Brunetti's. On the evening of January 6, 2018, she communicated with him and arranged to meet him in the parking lot of an apartment complex in the 5000 block of Yale Road in the Raleigh neighborhood of Memphis. When Brunetti arrived at the location, Miller was waiting. The robbery commenced. Brunetti was shot multiple times during the encounter. He died at the scene. Memphis Police Department investigators traced the communications between Calderon and Brunetti in the period leading up to the meeting. Cellular evidence established her presence at the location. Witness statements corroborated her coordination with Miller before and during the event. The investigation produced sufficient evidence to charge both defendants with their respective roles in the offense. Miller proceeded to trial in the Shelby County Criminal Court in late 2018. A Shelby County jury heard the evidence, the cellular records, witness testimony, and the reconstruction of the timeline, and returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of first-degree murder. Miller was sentenced to life in prison. Calderon entered a guilty plea to facilitation to commit first-degree murder. Judge Bobby Carter of the Shelby County Criminal Court accepted the plea. Calderon was sentenced to 18 years in the Tennessee Department of Correction. The Shelby County District Attorney's Office at the time, led by District Attorney Amy Wyrick, cited the Calderon case in public comments as an example of how the facilitation statute could be used to hold accomplices fully accountable even when the firearm was physically in the hands of a co-defendant. The prosecution's position was that the act of arranging the meeting, of bringing the victim to a location knowing that a robbery would be attempted, constituted material facilitation of the first-degree murder that followed. That legal position is consistent with Tennessee Code Annotated Section 39, Chapter 11, Section 403, which defines facilitation as knowingly providing substantial assistance to another person who commits a criminal offense. The Calderon prosecution applied that statute to the specific factual pattern of a girlfriend who uses her personal relationship with the victim to set up a robbery that results in the victim's death. The case is one of multiple Shelby County prosecutions in the 2010 to 2020 period involving this precise pattern. Memphis Police Department investigators have cited the cellular phone evidence in the Calderon case as representative of how digital forensic tools have transformed the prosecution of girlfriend-as-setup cases. Where older investigations relied primarily on eyewitness accounts, modern prosecutions build the timeline from call logs, text message records, tower triangulation data, and surveillance footage. Nicholas Bernetti was 29 years old. He was a Memphis resident. He went to a parking lot in Raleigh to meet someone he trusted. He did not survive the encounter. Case 8. Shayla Millian. She was 19 years old. She was using her phone to arrange meetings with men, and the men who showed up were not meeting her. They were walking into an armed robbery. This is the Shayla Millian case, one of the most recent Tennessee teen girlfriend prosecutions in this documentary's review. It is documented in the Shelby County criminal court system. The defendants are Shayla Millian, age 19, and her boyfriend Alexander Moreno, age 20. A third co-defendant, a 16-year-old female, is identified in court records only by initials because of her juvenile status. On the night of January 3, 2025, Memphis Police Department officers responded to a shots-fired call in the 3500 block of Kendrick Avenue. A homeowner reported that her vehicle had been damaged by gunfire. A second homeowner in the same block reported that his residence and vehicle had also been struck. The juvenile female co-defendant was subsequently charged with reckless endangerment in connection with this incident. On the night of January 4, 2025, at approximately 10 o'clock in the evening, a victim reported that he had arranged to meet a woman for a date in the 3900 block of Mamie Avenue. When he arrived, 3 men and 1 woman armed with rifles confronted him and his companions. A robbery and kidnapping followed. That location, that night, that victim. Approximately 1 hour later, in the area of Chuck Avenue and Wingate Cove, 2 women and 2 men alleged to be the same group carjacked 2 additional victims and took their wallets. One of the men shot one of the victims in the leg as that victim attempted to flee. Memphis Police Department investigators, working the case, determined through cellular analysis that the same telephone number had been used to communicate with multiple male victims, arranging meetings at locations where the carjackings then occurred. Investigators identified Millian as the individual who had used that number and who had set up the meetings. Moreno was identified as the alleged shooter. On January 15, 2025, Moreno was taken into custody. According to the police affidavit, he acknowledged being involved in the robbery and the carjacking and acknowledged shooting one of the victims. A photographic lineup was conducted with the shooting victim, who identified Millian as one of the women involved in the carjacking. Millian was arrested shortly after Moreno's confession. Moreno was charged with criminal attempt first-degree murder, 3 counts of aggravated robbery, 2 counts of carjacking, 3 counts of employment of a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony, especially aggravated kidnapping, and 4 counts of aggravated assault. Millian was charged with criminal attempt first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated robbery, 2 counts of carjacking, and 2 counts of employment of a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony. The 16-year-old female co-defendant was charged with the same primary counts and additionally with 2 counts of reckless endangerment. The case was submitted to the Shelby County Grand Jury on February 6, 2025. Bond was set at $750,000 for Moreno and $200,000 for Millian. As of the most recent reporting available for this documentary, the case remains pending in the Shelby County Criminal Court. All charges are allegations until proven at trial. Final verdicts and sentencing dispositions are not yet part of the public record. The Millian case is documented here as a contemporary example of the dating application-based setup pattern that Memphis investigators have tracked across multiple Shelby County cases. The use of a telephone number to arrange contact with multiple targets, the coordination of an armed group at a predetermined location, and the use of a female participant as the point of contact are all elements that Memphis Police Department investigators have identified as a pattern consistent with organized robbery schemes. The cellular metadata, photographic lineup identification, and post-arrest admissions are the categories of evidence that will drive this prosecution through the Shelby County court system in the months ahead. The victims in the January 4 incidents were in public locations. They believed they were meeting someone they knew or had spoken to. They were confronted with rifles. One of them was shot in the leg as he tried to get away. Case 9, Asia Shell. She pulled up to a gas station on Elvis Presley Boulevard in Memphis. The man filling his tank never expected to lose his vehicle, his keys, and everything in his pockets. He certainly didn't expect to see a rifle. This is the Asia Shell case, documented in the Shelby County Criminal Court System. The defendant is Asia Shell. Her co-defendant is identified in court records as a 16-year-old male, unnamed because of his juvenile status. The case is one of a category of Memphis prosecutions involving a young adult female and a juvenile male carrying out armed carjackings at commercial locations. At approximately 9:30 in the morning, Memphis Police Department officers responded to the Marathon gas station at 2260 Elvis Presley Boulevard. A man reported that he had been approached while pumping fuel by a man and a woman armed with a rifle. According to the police report, the two individuals went through the victim's pockets, removed his property, took his keys, and left in his 2008 Jeep Liberty. At approximately 6 o'clock in the evening of the same day, Memphis Police Department officers observed the stolen Jeep Liberty in the parking lot of a store on North Watkins in the Fraser community. Officers followed the vehicle as it moved into a nearby residential area and onto Kensett Street. A foot pursuit followed. Both occupants of the vehicle were apprehended. When officers attempted to identify Shell, she provided a false name. Once her identity was established through fingerprint records, officers discovered that she had 2 outstanding warrants for theft of property valued at $1,000 or less. Shell was charged with carjacking under Tennessee Code Annotated Section 39, Chapter 13, Section 404, a Class B felony in Tennessee. She was additionally charged with aggravated robbery, evading arrest on foot, criminal impersonation, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The contributing to the delinquency charge arose from her alleged use of the 16-year-old male as an armed participant in the carjacking. The 16-year-old male co-defendant was charged in the juvenile system with carjacking, aggravated robbery, and evading arrest on foot. The Shell case illustrates 2 distinct elements of Tennessee criminal prosecution that recur in teen girlfriend and young adult female carjacking cases. First, the contributing to the delinquency charge at Tennessee Code Annotated Section 37, Chapter 1, Section 156, which applies when an adult facilitates or encourages criminal activity by a minor. Shell, as a legal adult, faced that charge in addition to the primary carjacking and robbery counts because her co-defendant was a juvenile. Second, the criminal impersonation charge, codified at Tennessee Code Annotated Section 39, Chapter 16, Section 301, which applies when a defendant provides a false identity to a law enforcement officer during an investigative contact. Taken together, those charges represent a layered prosecution that Tennessee courts have seen with increasing frequency in Memphis carjacking cases where adult women and male juvenile co-defendants operate together. Shelby County is one of the most active jurisdictions in the United States for carjacking prosecutions. Memphis Police Department data has shown that carjacking incidents in the county increased substantially during the early 2020s, and prosecutors have responded with aggressive charging and a consistent use of carjacking's Class B felony designation, which carries a minimum of 8 years in the Tennessee Department of Correction without sentence reduction eligibility below 30%. Shell's disposition in the Shelby County Criminal Court, as a recent case, reflects the pending stage of processing common in Tennessee's high-volume urban court dockets. The case file is open. The charges are on the record. The outcome will be determined through the Shelby County court system. The victim at the Marathon gas station on Elvis Presley Boulevard was pumping fuel on an ordinary morning. He was approached by two people with a rifle. He lost his vehicle and everything in his pockets at a gas pump on one of Memphis's most recognizable streets. Case 10, Tadel Ship. He was 17 years old when it happened. He was 67 years old before the Tennessee Board of Parole reviewed his case for the first time. And when they were done reviewing it, they voted to deny him. This is the Tadel Ship case file, the second prosecution arising from the January 1995 killing of Colleen Slimmer at the Knoxville Job Corps Center. The first file, Case 1 in this documentary, covers Christa Pike, who planned and led the offense and is currently on Tennessee's death row awaiting execution. This file covers Ship, her 17-year-old boyfriend, the co-defendant who walked into that wooded area with her, and who has spent the 30 years since in the Tennessee prison system. Ship's case is included as the 10th file in this documentary specifically because it illustrates the long arc of post-conviction litigation that follows Tennessee teen girlfriend prosecutions. The original offense in January of 1995 produced a legal record that has been continuously active for 3 decades and is scheduled to remain active through at least the year 2030. At the time of the offense, Ship was a juvenile. Under Tennessee law, the Knox County District Attorney's Office moved to transfer his case to adult court under Tennessee Code Annotated Section 37, Chapter 1, Section 134. The juvenile court conducted a transfer hearing. The findings entered by the juvenile court judge reflected that Ship was not amenable to treatment within the juvenile system, that the offense alleged was within adult court jurisdiction, and that the interests of the community required adult court handling. The case was transferred. Ship's trial took place in the Knox County Criminal Court in January of 1997, 2 years after the offense and approximately 10 months after Pike's trial concluded. The prosecution presented 4 categories of evidence: Ship's own recorded confession to Knox County investigators, the testimony of co-defendant Shayla Peterson, who cooperated with the state, the physical evidence recovered from the scene and from Pike at the time of her arrest, and the Job Corps Center sign-out logbook, which established Ship's presence in the group that left with Slimmer on the evening of January 12, 1995. The defense argued that Pike had been the principal actor and that Ship's culpability was diminished by his age and by her role as the initiator of the plan. The jury rejected those arguments as to guilt. Ship was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. At sentencing, the death penalty was not available. Ship was 17 at the time of the offense, and Tennessee statute, consistent with federal constitutional requirements as then understood, did not permit the imposition of the death penalty on a juvenile offender. The jury was instructed on 2 options: life with the possibility of parole or life without the possibility of parole. The jury could not reach unanimity on life without parole. The trial judge imposed a sentence of life with the possibility of parole on the murder count and a consecutive 25-year term on the conspiracy count. The consecutive structure meant that Ship's parole eligibility was pushed well into his adult years. The Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed Ship's convictions and sentence on direct appeal. Multiple post-conviction petitions followed over the years. Each was denied at the trial court level. Each denial was affirmed on appeal. In November of 2022, the Tennessee Supreme Court issued its opinion in State v. Booker, holding that mandatory life without parole sentences for juvenile homicide offenders are unconstitutional under the Tennessee Constitution. Ship's attorneys examined whether the Booker ruling could be applied retroactively to open a pathway to parole eligibility review. The analysis concluded that Ship's sentence, because it was life with parole rather than life without parole, was already technically eligible for parole board consideration. The Booker ruling did not materially change Ship's legal status. On October 8, 2025, Tadel Ship appeared before the Tennessee Board of Parole for his first parole hearing. The hearing took place at the Northwest Correctional Complex in Tiptonville, Tennessee, where Ship is currently incarcerated. Tennessee Board of Parole member Tim Gobble reviewed the file and heard the submissions. He voted to deny parole, citing the seriousness of the underlying offense. His recommendation was that Ship complete the Strong R assessment program recommendations and maintain positive institutional behavior. Gobble recommended the case be scheduled for review again in 5 years, in October of 2030. May Martinez, the mother of Colleen Slimmer, submitted a video statement opposing parole. She has continued, across 3 decades, to appear at every legal proceeding connected to her daughter's case. The full Tennessee Board of Parole deliberated and voted to deny parole. The case is scheduled for renewed consideration in 2030. Ship's 30-year record in the Tennessee Department of Correction, the constitutional evolution of juvenile sentencing law from Roper v. Simmons through Graham v. Florida, through Miller v. Alabama, through the Tennessee Supreme Court's own Booker opinion, and the continued opposition of the victim's family all converged on that October 2025 hearing. Parole was denied. The legal process continues. The Knox County criminal record in the Slemmer case is now 30 years old. It has generated published opinions from the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals, from the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Tennessee, from the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, and from the Tennessee Supreme Court. It has been cited in law review articles, in criminal procedure textbooks, and in legislative analyses of Tennessee's juvenile transfer statute. Christa Pike is on death row. Tadel Ship is in Tiptonville, and the next hearing in the Ship matter is calendared for the fall of 2030. This is what the long record of a teen girlfriend prosecution looks like from the inside of the court system. 30 years of files, 30 years of hearings, 30 years of a victim's mother submitting statements to review boards, and 30 years of legal process grinding forward in courtrooms and hearing rooms across Tennessee. Colleen Slemmer was 19 years old. She came to Knoxville from Florida to build a future. On the night of January 12, 1995, she walked out of the Job Corps Center with people she knew. She did not walk back. 10 cases, 10 Tennessee courthouses, 10 documented prosecutions. From Knox County in 1995 to Shelby County in 2025. From a federal vocational center near the University of Tennessee to a gas station on Elvis Presley Boulevard in Memphis. From the mountains of Johnson County to the rural roads of Cumberland County. Every defendant in this documentary was charged in a real Tennessee court. Every charge was filed by a real Tennessee prosecutor. Every verdict was returned by a real Tennessee jury or entered through a documented plea proceeding. Every sentence is currently on file with the Tennessee Department of Correction or the Tennessee Board of Parole. The pattern that runs through all 10 cases is the same pattern that has run through Tennessee criminal jurisprudence for decades. A romantic relationship that became the motivating factor in a serious crime. A teenager or young woman who made a decision that permanently changed the trajectory of her life and permanently ended or permanently altered the lives of the people she targeted. The investigation procedures evolved. The forensic technology evolved. Cellular metadata replaced analog log books. Internet protocol tracing replaced door-to-door canvassing. Photographic lineup identifications replaced single witness identifications. But the underlying legal structure, the Tennessee statutes, the first-degree murder definitions, the facilitation provisions, the juvenile transfer process, the appellate review framework, remained consistent and produced consistent outcomes across 3 decades of prosecutions. If you found this case file review informative, please like this video, leave a comment with the case that stood out to you most, and hit the subscribe button for Crime Document. We release new court-documented case reviews every week. Every case, every charge, every verdict, fully verified, fully documented, right here on Crime Document.